the PGA Tour is returning. Actually, not returning. It's going to be played in Detroit starting soon. The Quicken Loans, the National, the Open, whatever the hell they call it, is going to be at the Detroit Golf Club. Woj, which of your golf sources did you tap into this? Did you talk to Arnie? Did you talk to Jack? Who'd you talk to?
No, pretty much Tiger. Tiger clued me in. Now, does this mean I have to go buy, like, golf spikes to walk the course?
Yes.
Next June at the Detroit Golf Club?
Soft spikes only.
By the way, if you did talk to Arnie, you would have been doing a seance.
Yeah, he's dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know.
I just want to make sure.
That was part of the line.
I know.
Ben Hogan, Byron Nelson, Gene Sarazen, all dead.
I must admit, when Jamie said that, I had to think for a second. Wait a minute. I don't think Arnie is with us.
Right.
No, we lost Arnie. We lost Arnie about a year and a half
His grandson's pretty good on the tour.
Who, Ryan?
Yeah,
Sam
that's what I've
Saunders.
heard.
Yes.
Oh. No,
By
good.
the way, I was listening to the little program with Jamie and Stoney and the Heather Sparks.
Yes.
And
Heather Sparks.
listening to the news items,
Yes.
there are a lot of stupid people still on the planet after all these years, aren't there?
I know, yes.
What, give us an example. What stood out
How
to you?
have they survived?
The sweetheart thing on the stupid
boarding pass. Yeah, dumb.
Cheering graduates being hustled off the stage and arrested. Were they arrested?
The guys in Florida, they weren't arrested, but they were just shoved off the stage. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
People getting up in arms over a tree. No, lots of stupid people.
Lots of
I do
stupid.
appreciate.
All right, Woj, let's get right to it. SVG gone. You used to call him a vacuum cleaner salesman back when he was in Miami. He came here. He became our beloved vacuum cleaner salesman, but now he's gone. First of all, I guess, what went wrong in your mind? What's the biggest thing that went wrong? We all know the Donovan Mitchell. Yeah, you're right. What went right? If you look back at 4 years here, what did Stan do right in your mind?
Well, now let's be clear here. It went right at first. I mean, not immediately, didn't it? They start like 5-23 the first season, but he made the Reggie Jackson trade. That's certain, and he had to do that because Brandon Jennings tore up his Achilles heel. With Justin Jennings was looking like he might be okay. He made some adjustments. The second year they went to the playoffs. I really do think, and remember when Van Gundy was hired 4 years ago, and the Pistons got him instead of Golden State getting him. It was with much fanfare. It was, I think we all,
yes.
I think even the Jamie and the Stoney endorsed that you'd given them both jobs.
Yeah, I liked it.
A little bit suspicious of that, but we endorsed it, I think.
I liked the idea behind both guys, or him getting both jobs. I really did, and now I realize that was a mistake because those are two different jobs, and I don't think one man can do those two jobs, and I just don't think that Van Gundy is and was fiscally responsible enough to run the front office.
I think he was almost, and again, I do think it started fine. They made the playoffs that second year. They took the Cavs to 4 hard-fought games in a sweep,
I call that the 4-game sweep, Woj.
It was a 5-game sweep.
No, 4.
And there were signs, I think. Now, I almost think Van Gundy, having the power, overused it or got too sure of himself, was like too impetuous with some of the trades and some of the moves. And in that dual role, you're missing checks and balances. And going forward, I assume that's what Tom Gores and Arn Tellem and the Pistons Brain Trust has figured out, that you need more checks and balances. And I've said this before, and I really believe it. Was it the deciding factor? Ultimately, no. But the fact that for the past 3 to 4 weeks, we've watched Donovan Mitchell, play in the playoffs for the Utah Jazz and finish off a spectacular rookie season. I don't think that helped Van Gundy. As, these talks went on between Van Gundy and Gores, I have a feeling that came up a few times. Okay, how was your decision-making process there again? Who did you bounce that off of? And, I'm not saying Donovan Mitchell is the reason he got fired. I think ultimately it was because Reggie Jackson, for whatever reason, hasn't worked out. It's mostly for injuries, but for whatever reason, that's the main reason Van Gundy got, quote-unquote, let go or parted ways. But it sort of sounded like a firing.
You have to assume, by the way, that Gores knew who Donovan Mitchell is. or knows who
Well,
he is.
somebody told him, I'm sure. Come on, please.
But Jamie, but Woj, as we said yesterday, we were talking about what was the one thing he did wrong, and mine was obviously you can sit and talk about the cap mismanagement, all that. With all that, he never found somebody who could really successfully shoot from the outside and adjust his game to the way it kind of was in Orlando when he got Rashard Lewis. And the way the NBA game is now. And they never got that player. And maybe that's why he went searching too much for guys like Luke Kennard and Langston Galloway paying all that money, and even John Lauren. His first free agent signing, I think, was Jody Meeks.
No, absolutely. The shooting thing, and you're right. I thought he chased mistakes after mistakes from Stanley Johnson for the defense and the athleticism. And then now we got to get the shooter and Luke Kennard. And I get that. Now, that said, I still think Stan Van Gundy is a respected basketball man and a good coach. He needed somebody to check him on some things. And he always talked about how Jeff Bauer does most of the work, and, I just have the final say. But he had the final say, so this is on him. And the other thing, too, Blake Griffin, in my mind, acquiring him, that was not the quote-unquote final straw, okay? It was a desperate Hail Mary, and I don't think it was ordered by Tom Gores. I do think that was a mutual thing between Gores and Van Gundy. Listen, it's been pretty dull down at Little Caesars Arena. Let's spice it up. And I don't think Van Gundy was forced into doing that. And the way that roster was set up, I know it's going to look bad long-term going forward, but at the time, I thought it was a worthwhile risk just to try something different, which a Hail Mary, call it whatever it was, but I don't think it was going to work the other way with Tobias Harris and Avery Bradley.
If you're Tom Gores, and besides unbuttoning your shirt a few more notches, who would be your number one choice to A, run the team, or B, coach it?
Well, I haven't explored too much I know people like the guy from the Cavaliers,
David Griffin.
David Griffin, and it seems to me the hottest coaching prospect with at least some experience is Budenholzer, the former Hawks coach.
Right.
I know people are really intrigued by Jerry Stackhouse, and to myself, I would lean towards anybody with experience. And I think Chauncey Billups will end up being a very good front office guy at some point, bright mind, keen insight. Can you take a risk on a no-experience guy? And, I don't know, certainly not director of basketball operations, I wouldn't think, but can you take a chance on that?
Maybe he can be like what Joe was to Rick's son to Jeff Bauer for 1 year.
You're right. Joe Dumars came in and learned for a little while, and maybe there is some element of that. That actually might make sense. I think we have to be careful not to just pick out the former Pistons. Rasheed Wallace, director of marketing, Ben Wallace, director of jersey sales. We got to be careful not to just do that. But it's what we think, and it's also you got to put yourself in the mind. I know it's somewhat scary, but put yourself in the mind of Tom Gores, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind making a splash. But you know what? You don't need to make a splash with the director of basketball operations. You need to get a really strong and I think experienced basketball mind in there, because they can't do a whole lot with the roster right now. But someone's going to have to put together a long-term vision and stick to it, and that was. Ultimately, and I bet Van Gundy would admit it, that was ultimately his failing, is that he kind of impetuously switched directions at times, sometimes out of necessity because of injuries, and sometimes we're not really quite sure why. And was he hamstrung with Andre Drummond? Did he try to trade Drummond, and was that frowned upon by ownership? That is kind of the one untold story that I'm not sure about.
Well, Joe, you have a lot of dark chapters in your life. One of them is your friendship over the years with Jason Whitlock. No, I'm joking.
We love the Whitlock.
He's one of your boys, okay? And Whitlock has boys. And one of his boys is Isaiah Lord Thomas, who he actually argued for to get this exact job a few years ago before it was given to SVG. Have you talked to your boy Whitlock, as he talked to it, is Isaiah even a remote possibility, or does that make you run for the hills, fleeing with your hair on fire?
It doesn't make me run for the hills fleeing with my hair on fire because I understand, the connection that Isaiah has here. But I think that'd be a hard hire. I argued with Jason Whitlock this at the time a few years ago, just because of not only the basketball history, but the off-the-court history with Isaiah back with the Knicks. And, does that thing have to stick with you forever, the sexual harassment lawsuit and everything else with the Knicks? No, it doesn't have to stick with you forever. But I think that would be that would be a difficult sell in my mind. Maybe not to the average, to hardcore Pistons fans who just want some connection. Maybe they would appreciate it, but I wouldn't do it. I think because you would just be doing it because he's a Piston, right?
His draft record was very good. His free agent signings and trades were horrible.
Right.
So have him just make him draft director.
There you go.
With the Raptors back in the day, right? Damon Stoudemire on the right. That's true.
Actually,
That's
the Knicks he actually drafted decently too.
But that was also kind of a long time ago.
Right, I know.
Yeah.
Wasn't it? Didn't you have a stint at Florida International for a few years as well in between there?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'd be careful about it. I wouldn't 100% rule it out, but I wouldn't do it.
All right, Robert, great stuff. Great talking to you. Have a great day. Anything else you want to plug?
We got a full Bogey and Wojo show tonight.
Unless the Tigers go extras.
Unless the Tigers go extra. And by the way, the Tigers, they're playing the Rangers today.
Yeah.
Only 2 games behind the Indians.
That's right, baby.